You are easier to manipulate than you might imagine. There are countless ways we can be swayed by the influence of others. In this video, we'll dive deep into one such method. Let's start with a story. Felicity's Cafe was well regarded, known for serving some of the best coffee in the city at reasonable prices. A small coffee was $3.50 and a large was $6. Most customers chose the small size as it appeared more affordable. Although Felicity was great at making coffee, she wasn't so great at running a business. It wasn't long before Felicity's Cafe was losing money. Worried about her financial future, Felicity called her good friend Penny for advice. Penny operated a successful cafe of her own. To help make Felicity's Cafe profitable, Penny made one simple suggestion. Introduce a medium cup size. A small coffee remained $3.50, a new medium size was introduced, priced at $5.50, and the large coffee remained $6. At the end of the month, the accounts spoke for themselves. Felicity's Cafe was profitable. But how did the introduction of a medium-sized coffee make such a big difference? This brings us to the framing effect. The framing effect is a cognitive bias in which the way information is presented influences our judgments. It's about the packaging of the information rather than the information itself. Felicity framed the way customers selected their coffee. By adding a medium size, which is only 50 cents less than the large, more customers chose the large size because it appeared better value. Customers were influenced to spend more. If a coffee cup can change our behavior, we have to admit how easily influenced we really are. Understanding the framing effect makes us less susceptible to influence and better at influencing others. Consider unframed versus framed information. Imagine a contractor delivering bad news. In the unframed scenario, he might say,
"The basement is ruined and needs a complete replacement."
This unframed statement focuses on the information itself without any framing. Adding a frame, the contractor might say,
"I've got good news. The house is undamaged, but the basement is ruined and needs a complete replacement."
This frames the information in a way that would likely receive a better reaction from worried homeowners and a new job for the contractor. Let's consider another example. Positive gain versus negative loss framing. Imagine a doctor discussing the risks of a surgery. Using a positive or gain frame, the doctor might say,
"If you undergo this surgery, you have a 90% chance of survival."
This statement focuses on the positive or gain for the patient. Conversely, using a negative or loss frame, the doctor might say,
"If you undergo this surgery, you have a 10% chance of dying."
This negative statement produces a completely different reaction, even though the underlying information is exactly the same. Let's explore some different types of framing and how they attempt to influence us. Social norm framing uses the influence of societal norms and the desire to conform. It leverages the perception of what is commonly expected by society. A hotel might encourage guests to reuse towels by stating,
"Join your fellow guests in helping to save the environment. 75% of our guests reuse their towels."
This framing works because humans have a natural tendency to match the behavior of those around them. Be aware when social norms are being used to influence you, and don't be afraid to defy social expectations. Limited options framing involves presenting a deliberately restricted set of choices. By concealing some options, the decision maker is steered towards a specific choice. Imagine attending a team meeting. The manager states,
"In order to meet our deadline, we can either work extra hours or reduce the project's scope."
Other options, such as bringing in temporary staff or pushing the deadline back, are not mentioned. The team members debate over the two known options, completely unaware that other viable options are available to them. By artificially limiting the available options, the decision maker may be pushed towards a predetermined option, all the while maintaining the illusion of free choice. To overcome limited options framing, question whether the known options are the only options available, and look for other possibilities that might better suit your needs. Values framing aligns the presentation of choices with the individual's personal values or beliefs. It leverages what's important to you in an attempt to influence your perceptions. For example, a company marketing a new electric vehicle might frame its advertisements towards environmentally conscious consumers by highlighting,
With zero emissions and eco-friendly features, you can save the planet, one drive at a time.
values framing impacts us because it taps into our core beliefs, making the choice feel much more personal. This can lead to decisions that may align with our values, but may not always be the most beneficial. To counter values framing, reflect on whether the value alignment is genuine, or if values are just being used to manipulate you. Contextual framing changes our perception based on the context in which something is presented. Imagine planning a birthday party for a friend. In one context, you might ask,
How should we plan a birthday party for Adam?
This context focuses on the logistical aspects and potential challenges of organizing the event. Alternatively, you could reframe the question to,
How can we make Adam's birthday party unforgettable?
This shifts the focus to creating a special and enjoyable experience, which can positively influence everyone's enthusiasm for planning the event. Anchoring framing relies heavily on the first piece of information encountered, the anchor, to make subsequent judgments and decisions. For example, in legal settlements, the initial settlement request often serves as an anchor. If a plaintiff states,
I demand $1 million in damages,
subsequent negotiations are likely to revolve around this anchor number, and the eventual settlement will be higher than if the plaintiff had started at a lower, more realistic amount. Anchoring affects us because the initial piece of information sets a starting point for everything that follows. We are heavily influenced by this initial anchor, even if it is not relevant or appropriate. To counter anchoring, first, identify any anchors that may be affecting your thinking. Then, challenge these anchors. Ask yourself, who dropped this anchor and how relevant is it? The framing effect is a powerful influencer. So how might we stop it from affecting our perceptions? Let's look at some practical strategies. The first step in overcoming the framing effect is acknowledging that we are all susceptible to manipulation. We like to think we're not easily influenced. We assume our choices are entirely our own. But we are more easily influenced than we believe. Once we have enough humility to admit this, then we can become more vigilant. The key to overcoming framing is to consider the motivation of the entity you are interacting with. When you understand someone's intent, you get a clearer picture of how they may be framing you. An effective strategy to overcome framing is to delay decisions. Artificial time constraints are often applied so you don't have the opportunity to outthink the framing. Instead, sleep on it. Give yourself the time to consider all the information thoroughly. Reframing information is another effective strategy. This involves taking the presented information and applying your own frame. For example, if a product is marketed positively as having an 85% success rate, reframe it by considering the negative 15% failure rate. This broader perspective helps to neutralize the bias created by the original framing. When contesting framing, expect some level of social discomfort. This is even more apparent in cases where people hold opposing frames. A multitude of factors will determine whose frame prevails. In some cases, sheer willpower may be enough to impose your frame onto others. So how might we use framing to our benefit? Using the framing effect for personal benefit involves creating your own frames and imposing them onto other people. Ask yourself, how can you surround the question or the information with a frame that will get you what you want? When asking for a raise, avoid unframed requests like,
I would like a raise.
Instead, frame the request with your recent performance. For instance,
Given my increased responsibilities and the success of recent projects, I believe an adjustment to my salary is fair.
this approach makes your request more compelling and harder to refuse. Understanding your audience is imperative. Tailor your framing to what is most likely to resonate with them. When you understand what's important to your audience, you can present your message in a way that increases your odds of success. When trying to convince your partner to take a holiday to a destination of your choosing, frame the request to their benefit. For example,
Let's go to England. The history is amazing, and I know you love history.
framing from their perspective has a better chance of a positive reaction, even if your desire to go to England is to play golf. Framing doesn't have to be nefarious. We can use framing to influence those around us in positive ways. Say you want your aging parents to eat healthier. Framing your request as,
You can eat more nutritious foods to boost your energy.
will almost certainly garner a better reaction than,
You should cut out junk food.
with the framing effect in play, our decisions may not always be our own. However, if we can recognize when we are being framed, we have the opportunity to counter its influence, and in turn, make better decisions. In this way, your choices really are yours.